Welcome to my channel, The World of Science Fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.
The sun beat down mercilessly on the scorched surface of the dead world. Jagged shadows stretched across the sand, cast by the ruins of a long-forgotten structure. Tarek moved slowly, carefully, his visor flickering under the oppressive heat. He reached the crumbled remains of what had once been a maintenance outpost. As he leaned closer, trying to make out a faint marking on the ancient alloy wall, he stumbled, helmet colliding with the sharp edge of a protruding beam. The impact rang out metallic and hollow. For a moment, everything was still. Then, a click. From within his helmet, through the static and dust, a voice spoke. "You saved me." Tarek froze. He scanned the area again, more intently now. The ancient wall he had collided with seemed to vibrate subtly, as if awakening. Beneath layers of sand and corrosion, a faint light began to pulse. He stepped back. A seam, once invisible, now glowed in the metal. Tarek drew his multi-tool and began clearing the debris. The more he revealed, the more obvious it became. This wasn't just a wall. It was a door, sealed, forgotten, waiting, and something, or someone, was inside. The voice came again, clearer now, as Tarek worked to expose the hidden panel. "Please, don't open it." So of course, he did exactly what the voice had pleaded against. He retrieved a small pry bar from his pack and wedged it into the seam along the edge of the panel. The metal groaned in protest as he applied pressure, decades of corrosion giving way reluctantly. With a final heave, the panel broke free, revealing a hidden compartment behind. Dust and stale air rushed out, carrying with it the faint smell of antiseptic and something else, something organic. Tarek shielded his eyes momentarily, then peered inside. Behind the panel, nestled among broken supports and heat-sealed steel, was a translucent, coffin-like container. The material wasn't glass, but something stronger, with a faint blue luminescence emanating from its edges. And inside was a woman. Her skin was a striking shade of blue, marked with intricate patterns that might have been tattoos or perhaps natural markings of her species. Her features were humanoid but alien, high cheekbones, a sharp jawline, and a delicate nose. Her eyes were closed, face serene, as if in deep sleep. She wore a form-fitting suit of some material Tarek had never seen before, dark against her blue skin. Tubes and wires connected from her spine to the walls of the container, pulsing with occasional bursts of light. Her body showed evidence of old injuries, scars across her exposed arms and neck, but she appeared intact, preserved. As Tarek stared in disbelief, her eyes snapped open. They were startling, silver irises that seemed to glow from within, pupils contracting rapidly as they adjusted to the light. Those eyes locked onto him with an intensity that made him step back. "You're not one of them," she said, her voice clearer now, but still coming through his discarded helmet's comm system, rather than through the container. Tarek approached cautiously, retrieving his helmet and holding it near his ear. "Who are them?" he asked, studying her face through the translucent material. "The ones who built this wall to keep me in," she replied, her voice fading slightly. "After the vote." "What vote?" Tarek pressed, leaning closer to the container. But she didn't answer. Her eyes fluttered closed again, and her body went still. For a moment, Tarek thought she might be dead, but a subtle rise and fall of her chest indicated she was still breathing. He examined the container more carefully. Along its edge was a small display panel showing vital signs: heartbeat, oxygen levels, brain activity. The readings were fluctuating, with the heart rate slowing dangerously and oxygen levels dropping steadily. Whatever stasis system had been maintaining her was failing, perhaps triggered by their interaction. Whoever she wasn't meant to wake up, and now she was dying. Tarek hesitated only briefly. He'd come looking for salvage, not responsibility. Certainly not a mysterious blue-skinned woman in a hidden stasis chamber, but something about her called to him, a mystery he couldn't walk away from. He located the container's release mechanism, a sequence of pressure points along its surface. Working quickly, he activated them in what he hoped was the correct pattern. The container hissed as its seal broke, the top sliding away to expose the woman to the open air. The tubes connected to her spine detached automatically with a series of soft clicks. She lay still, her breathing growing more shallow by the second. Tarek gently pulled her free from the container, surprised by how light she felt. From his pack, he retrieved an emergency medical kit and selected a stim injector, a universal stimulant designed to stabilize critical patients long enough to reach proper medical care. He pressed the injector against her neck and activated it. The effect was almost immediate. Her back arched and she gasped, eyes flying open again. Her hands shot up, grabbing his wrist with surprising strength. For a moment, they locked eyes, his brown ones wide with surprise, her silver ones filled with confusion and fear. Then her grip loosened and she slipped back into unconsciousness, though her breathing had stabilized. Tarek lifted her carefully, making a quick decision to take her back to his camp. As he maneuvered through the ruins with his unexpected burden, he failed to notice the subtle movement in the sand behind him, a ripple that followed their path, like something large tracking them just beneath the surface. The makeshift camp Tarek had established sat nestled between two massive fallen slabs of concrete, providing shelter from both the sun and the vicious sandstorms that swept across the plains without warning. A patched tarp served as additional protection, creating a shaded area where the temperature dropped to merely uncomfortable rather than lethal. He laid the blue-skinned woman on his sleeping pad, checking her vital signs again. The emergency stim had done its work. Her breathing was steady, her pulse stronger. Now he simply had to wait. Night fell swiftly on Calaris Fool, the temperature plummeting as dramatically as it had soared during the day. Tarek activated a small heating unit, placing it near the unconscious woman before settling himself against a chunk of debris to keep watch. He had plenty of questions, but they would have to wait until she woke, if she woke. He studied her in the dim light of his lamp. The markings on her skin weren't random. They followed patterns that suggested language or perhaps military insignia. The scars told stories of combat, of survival. Whoever she was, she had fought battles before being sealed away in that container. Hours passed. Tarek dozed intermittently, always waking with a start at the slightest sound. It was during one such moment of wakefulness that he realized her eyes were open again, watching him. "Water," she whispered, her voice raspy. He retrieved his canteen and helped her sit up enough to drink. She did so slowly, deliberately, like someone who understood the value of each drop in a desert world. "Thank you," she said after drinking. Her accent was strange, vowels slightly elongated, consonants clipped in unusual places, an ancient dialect perhaps, or one from a colony he'd never encountered. "My name is Naraya," she offered, studying him with those unsettling silver eyes. "Tarek," he replied simply. She nodded as if confirming something to herself. "You saved me once," she said, her gaze never leaving his face. "During the evacuation of Station 9. I remember your voice." Tarek frowned, shaking his head. "I was never on Station 9. A bitter laugh escaped him before he could suppress it. "I've saved people before, or tried to." His eyes hardened, reflecting the glow of the heating unit. "Didn't work out. Everyone I was supposed to extract burned. Maybe you're just a voice in my head. Maybe I died back then too." Naria didn't recoil from his cynicism. Instead, she studied him with quiet intensity. "Yet here you are," she observed. "Still breathing, still carrying that guilt like armor." "It's kept me alive," he countered. "Has it?" she asked. "Or has it just kept you from living?" A long silence stretched between them as she studied him, head tilted slightly. Her expression shifted from certainty to something more complex, disappointment mixed with curiosity. "Then you sound like someone who mattered," she finally said, her tone softer. Tarek had more questions than he knew how to ask. Who was she? Why had she been sealed away? What vote had she mentioned? But before he could voice any of them, a faint humming sound reached his ears. A sound he recognized all too well. Drones. He moved quickly to the edge of their shelter, peering up at the night sky. 3 small shapes moved against the stars, their outline distinctive, stealth-class reconnaissance drones, running dark with no identification signals. Military grade, not scavengers. "We need to move," he said, turning back to Nerea. "Someone's looking for something." "For me," she corrected, already attempting to stand. Her legs trembled with the effort, but determination hardened her features. "They've always been looking for me." Tarek gathered his essential supplies quickly, years of living on the edge having taught him the value of traveling light. He offered Naria a spare cloak, which she wrapped around herself without comment. The drones were circling tighter now, scanning patterns that would soon bring them directly over the camp. Tarek slung his pack over his shoulder and nodded toward a narrow passage between the concrete slabs. That way. Stay low. They slipped into the darkness just as the first drone passed overhead. Its scanning beam swept the abandoned camp, lingering on the still warm sleeping pad. Tarek and Nerea pressed themselves against the cold concrete, barely breathing as the light passed just meters away. When the drone moved on, they continued through the passage, emerging onto open sand. Tarek pointed toward a ridge of darker shapes in the distance, the wreckage of an old transport craft that had crashed during the initial bombardment of the planet. There we can... The sharp crack of a pulse rifle cut him off. One of the drones exploded in a shower of sparks, its remains tumbling to the ground. Tarek whirled, his own blaster already drawn, and fired at the second drone. His shot connected, sending the machine spiraling away, trailing smoke. The third drone, however, had already located them. It fired not an explosive round, but something smaller that buried itself in the sand near Tarek's foot. A tracker. "Run!" he shouted, grabbing Nerea's arm. They sprinted across the open ground, Tarek supporting much of Nerea's weight as her legs threatened to give way beneath her. Despite her weakened state, she moved with surprising coordination, as if her body remembered how to run, even if it lacked the strength to do so properly. The remaining drone circled once more before speeding away toward the horizon, reporting back to whoever had sent it. Tarek changed direction immediately, heading away from the transport wreckage he'd initially indicated. "They'll track us to where I pointed," he explained between breaths. "We go elsewhere." Nerea followed without question, limping but keeping pace. There was something practiced in her movements, something that spoke of extensive training and experience. She moved as if she'd done this before, many times. They traveled through the night, stopping only when Nerea's strength began to fail. By dawn, they had put several kilometers between themselves and the camp, reaching a different section of ruins. This one the remains of what might have been a residential block, with walls still high enough to provide cover from aerial observation. Tarek found a relatively intact room with part of its roof still in place, offering shade from the rising sun. Nerea collapsed against a wall, her breathing labored but controlled. "You should have left me," she said after catching her breath. "Still might," Tarek replied, though they both knew he wouldn't. He'd crossed that line when he'd pulled her from the container. She smiled, a brief, fleeting expression that transformed her face, making her seem younger somehow. "No, you won't. You're like him that way." "Like who?" "The one whose voice you share." Tarek didn't press further. Instead, he offered her more water and some of his rations, processed protein bars that tasted like nothing but provided essential nutrients. "Those drones," he said as they ate, "they weren't scavengers or local security. Military spec. No identification." Nerea nodded. "Black operations. They won't stop." "Who are they? And why are they after you?" She was silent for a long moment, staring at the half-eaten ration bar in her hand. When she finally spoke, her voice had taken on a distant quality, as if she were reciting something memorized long ago. "I was an arbiter, one of those chosen to cast deciding votes when the council deadlocked on matters of planetary security." She looked up at him, silver eyes haunted by shadows that seemed to shift and change, as if multiple personas fought for dominance behind them. 500 years ago, Tarek nearly choked on his water. 500, or was it 600? She frowned, pressing fingers against her temples. "No, 5. 5 centuries in stasis." But her voice faltered. "So many lives in my head." "What do you mean?" Tarek asked, moving closer. Nerea's eyes unfocused, staring at something he couldn't see. "They didn't just preserve me. They experimented. Memory implantation. Neural rewriting." A tremor ran through her body. "I remember being a soldier on the Northern Front. I remember being a teacher in the Central Academies. I remember being a mother of 3 in the Eastern settlements." Her voice cracked. "None of those lives were mine, but I feel them all. All their fears, all their deaths." Tarek felt a chill run through him, despite the heat. He recognized the symptoms, the imperial memory manipulation techniques that had been used on troublesome soldiers. He'd seen squad mates reduced to hollow shells when the process went wrong. The stasis technology was experimental then, designed to preserve living witnesses to historical events. Her fingers traced one of the scars on her arm absently. "Or in my case, to preserve a warning. A warning about what? 500 years ago, a vote was cast, whether to use a neuro-displacement weapon against our own cities to purge a revolt. Her voice had gone cold, clinical. The weapon would have targeted specific neural patterns associated with dissident ideology, effectively erasing the minds of anyone who opposed imperial rule while leaving their bodies intact. She paused, swallowing hard. I voted no. 7 of us did. 7 out of 15 arbiters. Deadlocked, Tarek murmured. The Emperor broke the tie. In favor. Her eyes met his, and in them he saw centuries of contained rage. But by then, some of us had already taken action to sabotage the weapon's deployment. They called it treason. She looked down at her hands, which had begun to tremble. The other dissenters were publicly executed. I was preserved. My mentor, her voice caught. My brother Vex convinced them I could be more valuable as an example. He designed the stasis chamber himself, locked me inside a data vault as a living memory, and a warning to future arbiters of the cost of defiance. Her face contorted in pain, and she pressed her palms against her temples again. And then they filled my head with the memories of everyone who suffered for my choice. Every dissident who was eventually caught. Every family torn apart. He made me experience each one personally, over and over. Tarek felt a familiar guilt rising within him, the same guilt that had driven him from military service into the wastelands after his fatal command error had killed his own people. But why are they hunting you now, after all this time? She looked at him with an intensity that made him shift uncomfortably. Because someone turned the wall back on. They remained in the ruins until nightfall, resting and planning. Naria's strength returned gradually, her body adapting with remarkable speed. By sunset, she was able to stand and walk without assistance, though Tarek noticed she favored her right leg. The Empire still exists then? She asked as they prepared to move out. Tarek nodded. In a way, fragmented after the sectorial wars. What's left calls itself the Sovereign Domains now. Same uniform, different name. And what are you? Not military, not quite civilian either. He hesitated, checking the charge on his blaster. Former special operations? Now I'm just a scavenger. No one is just anything, Naria observed quietly. As darkness fell, Tarek found himself watching her prepare, her movements precise despite her obvious pain. The smart choice would be to leave her, take his equipment, and disappear into the wasteland. She was a relic of an ancient conflict, and her war wasn't his responsibility. You're thinking of leaving, she said without looking up, reading his thoughts with uncanny precision. It would be the rational choice, he admitted. One straggler survives longer than 2. Then why haven't you gone? Tarek had no answer that made sense, even to himself. Maybe I'm tired of just surviving. He watched her carefully adjust something in her tattered clothing. What kept you there, he asked suddenly. Inside that wall for centuries. Why not just let go? Nerea paused, her silver eyes distant. Memory, she said softly. Their memory. It was my prison and my oath. She looked up at him. When they put me in stasis, I swore I would remember everyone they tried to erase. Every dissident, every family, every idea they tried to kill. Remembering was the only resistance I had left. Tarek nodded slowly, understanding something fundamental about her for the first time. And now? Now I need to set those memories free. They set out toward a ridge that Tarek knew well, a place where he had fought during his military days, where a battle had scorched the earth and left nothing behind but fused glass and metal. The journey was arduous, with Nerea occasionally stopping, her face contorted as conflicting memories assaulted her. The memories, she gasped during one such episode, they're fighting inside me. So many deaths, so many lives unlived. Tarek supported her weight, uncomfortably aware that every delay increased their chances of being discovered. We should rest. No, keep moving. I'll manage. And somehow she did. They reached the ridge just before dawn, the landscape transformed into an alien terrain, sand fused into glass by the heat of energy weapons. But something was wrong. A subtle vibration beneath their feet, a faint pulse that shouldn't have been there. You feel it too, Nerea said, not a question. Tarek nodded, kneeling to place his palm flat against the ground. The pulsing was rhythmic, artificial. There's something under the battlefield, something active. They found a relatively intact communications tower at the edge of the glass field, Its upper portion had been sheared off by weapons fire, but the base still stood, and more importantly, its access terminals might still function. Tarek worked quickly, connecting his portable power cell to the tower's systems. Ancient screens flickered reluctantly to life, displaying data in a format he recognized from his military days, though older, more primitive. "Can you access it?" Nerea asked, keeping watch. "Working on it," Tarek muttered, bypassing security protocols that had become obsolete decades ago. "There's something strange about the signal patterns." He isolated the frequencies, analyzing their source and destination. What he found made his blood run cold. "The signals are bouncing from my tracker, the one the drone shot into the sand." He turned to look at Nerea, realization dawning. "It's not just tracking our location. It's using my own armor's communication systems to relay the data." His armor, the specialized environmental suit he wore, had been military issue once. He'd modified it extensively, but the core communications array remained intact. A backdoor he'd never considered. He turned to find Nerea already moving, a blade in her hand that she must have pulled from somewhere in her clothing. For a moment he thought she meant to attack him, to eliminate the tracking signal by eliminating him. Instead, she held the blade out, handle first. "You didn't know," she said, her silver eyes searching his. "That's why I'm still here." Tarek took the blade and located the tracking chip embedded in his suit systems. With surgical precision, he cut it free, then crushed it beneath his boot. The pulsing beneath the glass field seemed to intensify briefly, then settled back into its regular rhythm. For the first time since he'd found her, Nerea nodded to him with something approaching respect. Trust, not given freely, but tested and earned. That night, as they huddled in the base of the communications tower, they planned their next move. The tracking signal had given away their general location, but destroying the chip had bought them time. "The pulse beneath the battlefield," Nerea said, tracing patterns in the dust on the floor. "It's a containment field. For others like me. More arbiters? No. Witnesses. Dissenters. Anyone the Empire wanted to preserve as examples or warnings." Her fingers stopped moving. The pattern complete. A map of some kind. "There's a black site facility beneath the glass. A vault of living memories." Tarek studied the pattern she'd drawn. "And you want to break in?" "I want to shut it down." Her eyes met his, fierce and determined. "And I need your help to do it." "If we do this," he said slowly, "we're declaring war on whatever's left of your empire." "They declared war on me 5 centuries ago," Nerea replied, her voice steel. "I'm just finally answering." Tarek hesitated, the ghosts of his past hanging heavy in the air between them. "Why should I help you? I've spent years running from war, from responsibility." Nerea studied him, her silver eyes reflecting the dim light. "Because you're still punishing yourself, aren't you? I can see it in the way you move, in how you flinch when I mention command decisions." She leaned closer. "What was it? An order gone wrong? A civilian casualty? Or something worse?" Tarek's jaw tightened, old wounds reopening. "My squad, 12 men and women. I called in coordinates for an extraction under heavy fire. Gave the wrong numbers." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Our own ships bombed our position. I was the only survivor." "And you've been hiding in these wastelands ever since." "Not hiding," he corrected sharply. "Surviving." "Is that enough?" she asked, her voice gentle despite the challenge in her words. "Just surviving?" The question hung between them, unanswered but resonating with truth. Tarek knew he had been merely existing since that day, not living. Perhaps that's why he'd pulled her from stasis. Some unconscious desire to do something that mattered again. Together they formulated a plan. The black site would be heavily guarded, automated defenses at minimum, possibly a small contingent of human personnel. They would need to disable the perimeter sensors, breach the main facility, and reach the central control systems. Tarek sketched out what he remembered of standard Imperial military installations, the likely layout, potential weak points. Nerea added details from her era, noting where designs had remained consistent over the centuries. By morning they had a strategy. It wasn't foolproof, far from it, but it was the best they could do with limited resources and time. As the sun rose over the glass battlefield, they gathered what weapons they had. Tarek's blaster, Nerea's blade, and a few improvised explosives he'd crafted from scavenged components. Not much to wage war with, but they had surprise on their side. And Naraya had 500 years of rage. They attacked at dawn. The black site was more visible in daylight than Tarek had expected. 3 slender towers rising from the glass field like accusing fingers pointed at the sky. They were camouflaged to match the fused sand around them, but to a trained eye, the regularity of their shape gave them away. 2 patrol drones circled the perimeter, following a predictable pattern that suggested complacency. Whoever monitored this facility wasn't expecting trouble. Not here. Not after all this time. Tarek and Naraya approached from the east, using the rising sun to obscure their movements. They reached the edge of the sensor perimeter without incident, crouching behind a twisted hull of what had once been an assault vehicle. "Remember," Tarek whispered, 30 seconds between sensor sweeps. Move when I signal." Naraya nodded, eyes fixed on the nearest tower. There was something predatory in her gaze, something that reminded Tarek that whatever else she had once been a person of significant authority and power. The sensor sweep passed, its subtle hum fading as it moved away from their position. Tarek raised his hand, waited 2 heartbeats, then dropped it. They sprinted across the open ground, boots crunching on the glass surface. 20 meters, 15, 10. The smooth side of the tower loomed before them, its surface unmarked by windows or visible entrances. Naraya reached it first, her fingers tracing patterns across the seemingly solid wall. A section of it shimmered and became transparent, revealing a small alcove with a control panel inside. "Some things don't change," she murmured, manipulating the controls with practiced ease. "Imperial security protocols have always favored consistency over innovation." The panel beeped softly, acknowledging her commands. A larger section of the wall dissolved, creating an entrance large enough for them to slip through. They entered quickly, the wall resealing behind them with a soft hiss. Inside, the tower was clinically sterile. White walls, soft ambient lighting, air that tasted of recyclers and antiseptic. A stark contrast to the ruined world outside. "This way," Naraya indicated, moving confidently down a corridor. Tarek followed, blaster drawn, watching their backs. They encountered no personnel, only automated systems that Naraya bypassed with disturbing ease. It seemed the facility operated with minimal human oversight, a forgotten outpost maintaining its function long after its purpose had been forgotten by most. They reached a junction where the corridor split in 3 directions. Naraya hesitated, her certainty faltering for the first time. "The designs have changed," she admitted. "The energy vault should be this way, but..." "We split up," Tarek decided. "I'll take the flanks, check for security and alternate access points." "You find the energy vault," Naraya nodded. "Be careful. If there are human personnel, they'll be elite guards, conditioned for absolute loyalty." "I've dealt with their type before," Tarek replied grimly. They separated, each taking a different corridor. Tarek moved cautiously, scanning for surveillance devices and mapping the layout in his mind. The eastern wing contained what appeared to be living quarters, sparse but functional, enough for perhaps a dozen personnel. Currently empty. The western wing housed a communications center, its banks of equipment humming softly. Here Tarek found what he was looking for, a security monitor showing various sections of the facility. One screen displayed a large chamber filled with stasis containers similar to the one Naraya had been sealed in, but more advanced. Dozens of them, arranged in concentric circles around a central pillar of pulsing light. The energy vault. Another screen showed Naraya making her way toward that chamber, unaware that her movements were being tracked. And a third screen showed something that made Tarek's blood freeze. A squad of armored figures converging on her position from a lower level. 6 of them carrying weapons that made his blaster look like a child's toy. Tarek didn't hesitate. He fired at the communications equipment, destroying the monitoring systems and hopefully disrupting whatever alarm had been triggered. Then he sprinted back toward the junction, taking the central corridor that Naraya had followed. He found her engaged with 3 guards moving with a fluid grace that defied her centuries in stasis. A high-pitched, keening sound emanated from her, some kind of sonic attack that disoriented her opponents. Tarek took aim and dropped one of the guards with a precisely placed shot to the neck joint of their armor. The remaining 2 turned at the new threat, giving Naraya the opening she needed. She dispatched them quickly, with movements that seemed almost precognitive. "The vault?" he asked, moving to her side. "Through there," She indicated a massive door at the end of the corridor. But it's sealed. I need to bypass the energy field. More coming, Tarek warned, hearing the clatter of boots on metal. How long? 2 minutes, she estimated, already working on the door's control panel. Tarek took position at a narrowing of the corridor. The approaching guards would have to funnel through the constricted space, limiting their ability to flank him. A bolt caught him in the shoulder, the impact spinning him around and slamming him against the wall. Pain exploded through his body, his vision blurring momentarily. He fought to stay conscious, raising his blaster with his good arm. Behind him, Naraya worked frantically at the door controls, her fingers dancing across the panel with increasing urgency. Got it! The massive door began to slide open, agonizingly slow. Go! He shouted to Naraya. I'll hold them. She slipped through the partially open door. Tarek continued firing, each shot carefully placed, despite the pain radiating from his shoulder. He followed when the door opened wide enough and Naraya sealed it behind them, temporarily keeping the remaining guards out. They found themselves in the vast chamber Tarek had seen on the monitors, circular, with a domed ceiling that pulsed with blue luminescence. Hundreds of stasis containers, arranged in concentric circles around a central pillar of swirling energy. Each container held a person, different species, different ages, all suspended in time. They were moving toward the central pillar when a section of wall slid open, revealing a hidden entrance. Commander Vex stepped through, his mechanical form fully armed, weapon systems humming to life. Protocol 37 Alpha, he intoned, voice devoid of the humanity he'd shown earlier. Terminate intruders. His weapon arm raised, targeting system locking onto Tarek. Naraya was too far away to intervene. Tarek stood his ground, refusing to close his eyes. Vex's arm stabilized, targeting reticles centered on Tarek's chest. Command, destroy. His finger tensed on the trigger mechanism. Then something changed. A tremor ran through the mechanical body. The targeting system wavered. You... Vex's voice shifted, the mechanical precision giving way to something more human. You remind me of someone, of what I was before. The weapon lowered fractionally. Why do you fight for her? For them? They're nothing to you. Because someone has to, Tarek answered simply. Because it's right. Another tremor, stronger this time. Vex's mechanical features contorted in what might have been pain. I was like you once. Before the core, before they took my choice away. The weapon lowered completely. If she is memory, he said finally, then I shall become silence, but not your enemy. Not anymore. His form began to shimmer, the mechanical parts separating from what remained of his human essence. Do what you must, sister. I will not stop you. The commander's form flickered more violently, features shifting between the current appearance and something else. Someone else. A different face. Younger, less adorned with rank. Naraya's breath caught. Vex, is it really you beneath all that machinery? The commander, Vex, stiffened. I am Commander Vex, yes, but you are mistaken if you believe there is any familial connection between us that will aid your... They didn't just erase your memories, Naraya interrupted, her voice thick with emotion. They erased your heart. My brother would never have forgotten me. Vex's mechanical features twitched. Brother is an inaccurate designation. I was your superior officer and mentor. You were more than that, Naraya insisted, her hand still glowing against his chest. You taught me to question, to seek truth beyond imperial doctrine. You were the one who first showed me the plans for the neuroweapon. You were the one who said we had to stop it. A tremor ran through Vex's form. Lies. I have always served the Empire with perfect loyalty. No, you changed your mind at the last moment. You betrayed our cause, betrayed the resistance, betrayed me. Tears slid down her cheeks now. Why, Vex? What did they offer you? What was worth turning me into? This. She gestured at herself, at the scars visible on her blue skin. I remember, Vex whispered, voice fluctuating between mechanical precision and human uncertainty. For a moment, warmth entered his eyes, human eyes beneath the artificial exterior. I wanted to save you. Execution versus preservation. I thought I could find a way to free you later. But they turned you instead, Naraya said softly. The memory core, Vex admitted, his voice becoming more human with each word. They connected me to it first, a test subject, and then I became its keeper. A look of profound sorrow crossed his increasingly human features. I thought I was protecting you. I thought preservation was mercy compared to execution. His voice cracked with regret. I didn't know they would fill you with others' memories, that they would use you as an experiment. And now, Nerea asked softly, now that you remember? Vex looked at the facility around them, at the systems he had maintained for centuries. If you are memory, he said finally, then I shall become silence, but not your enemy. Not anymore. His form began to shimmer, the mechanical parts separating from what remained of his human essence. Do what you must, sister. I will not stop you. Tarek, meanwhile, had managed to disable the remaining drones, but more security systems were activating throughout the control center. They were running out of time. Nerea, he called. Whatever you're doing, do it faster. She nodded without looking away from the fading form of her brother. Show me the core, Vex. Show me where your true consciousness resides. Vex raised a trembling hand, pointing toward a sealed door at the far end of the control center. There, the memory core. But you cannot destroy it without destroying me, and all those connected to it. I don't want to destroy it, Nerea assured him. I want to rewrite it. She turned to Tarek. Cover me. I need to reach that door. He nodded, positioning himself to provide covering fire as she made her way across the control center. They reached the door together, Nerea placing her hand against its surface. It recognized her somehow and slid open to reveal a smaller chamber beyond. Inside was a single pedestal supporting a crystalline structure that pulsed with multicolored light. The memory core. Nerea approached it reverently, the sword of light dimming slightly in her hand. 500 years of stolen memories, she murmured. 500 years of lives put on display as warnings. Can you really rewrite it? Tarek asked, keeping watch at the door. Not rewrite, release. She raised the sword one final time. The memories belong to their owners, not to the Empire. She brought the sword down upon the crystal, but instead of shattering it, the blade sank into its surface as if into water. Light flowed from the sword into the crystal, and from the crystal back into the sword, creating a circuit of energy that grew brighter and brighter. Nerea's expression changed from determination to realization. Her eyes met Tarek's. It needs a conduit, she said quietly, a living mind to channel the memories back to their owners. No, Tarek said, understanding immediately. There has to be another way. She smiled sadly. There isn't. I was never meant to leave this place, Tarek. I was always meant to be the key. Then let me do it, he said suddenly, stepping forward. Your mind is already fractured from what they did to you. Mine is whole. Let me be the conduit. Nerea's eyes widened in surprise, then softened with emotion. You would do that? For people you've never known? For a cause that isn't yours? It became mine the moment I pulled you from that wall, he replied, his voice steady despite his fear. Let me make this right. She reached out, touching his face with gentle fingers. Your memory is still clean, Tarek, unmarked by their experiments, untainted by centuries of manipulation. You must remain to bear witness, to remember us as we truly were. Her hand trembled against his cheek, and for the first time he saw naked fear in her silver eyes. But what if, her voice cracked, what if they consume me completely? What if I lose everything that was me? She glanced at the pulsing crystal. I'm not a hero, Tarek. I'm just a remnant, a collection of fragments that once was whole. Tarek caught her hand in his. You're more than that. You survived when they tried to erase you. Surviving isn't the same as living, she whispered, echoing his own words back to him. I'm afraid, not of ending, but of disappearing without a trace. You won't, he promised. I'll carry your memory, the real you, not what they made you. She took a deep breath, resolve hardening in her eyes. Then remember me as I choose to be, not as they forced me to become. Before he could protest further, an invisible barrier formed between them. Tarek slammed against it, calling her name. Please, he begged, don't do this. I've lived too many lives already, she said, her silver eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Now I get to choose how this one ends. She plunged her hand into the crystal alongside the sword. The energy circuit intensified, light traveling up her arm, across her chest, enveloping her entire body. She didn't scream, though pain etched itself across her features. Naraya! Tarek pounded against the barrier, helpless to intervene. Her eyes found his one last time, silver irises now blazing within her light. Remember us, Tarek. Remember me as I was, not as they made me. With those words, her physical form began to dissolve, transforming into countless motes of light that merged with the crystal. The sword clattered to the ground, its blade now dull and cracked, its power spent. The crystal pulsed once, twice, then exploded into a brilliant starburst that scattered throughout the chamber before racing outward, through the walls, through the very structure of the facility. The barrier vanished and Tarek staggered forward, falling to his knees where she had stood. The wave of light passed through him, and with it came a flood of images, sounds, emotions, fragments of thousands of lives, glimpses of experiences not his own. But most clearly he felt Naraya, not the fractured vessel he had known, but the person she had been before. Strong, whole, determined. When the light faded, he found himself alone in the chamber. Where the crystal had been now stood a simple, transparent prism that reflected ordinary light. Of Naraya there was no sign except for the broken sword on the floor. Tarek picked it up with trembling hands. The metal, once seemingly indestructible, felt brittle in his grasp. As he watched, hairline fractures spread across the surface, the blade darkening from silver to gray. Then with a sound like a final exhalation, it crumbled, dissolving into a fine, glittering dust that slipped through his fingers like memory itself. Too fragile to hold, but impossible to forget. "I'll remember," he whispered to the empty air. "I swear it." He made his way back to the main control center to find it transformed. The automated defenses hung inactive, and Vex's mechanical form had collapsed, now clearly revealed as a hollow shell. But on the monitoring screens, he saw the result of Naraya's sacrifice. Throughout the facility, stasis containers were opening. People were awakening, confused, disoriented, but alive, free. As he watched, 5 of them gathered in one chamber, seemingly recovering faster than the others. They moved with purpose, already organizing, already planning. But something else caught his attention. The way they looked at each other, the recognition in their eyes. Somehow they shared knowledge, shared purpose, shared memory. Tarek found an exit route through maintenance tunnels, his head pounding with each step. Images flashed behind his eyes, places he'd never been, people he'd never met, a history he'd never lived but could now almost grasp. Whatever Naraya had done, some fragment of it had transferred to him. He emerged onto the glass battlefield as the sun reached its zenith. Behind him, the 3 towers hummed with new activity. Not the sterile pulse of automated systems, but the chaos of liberation. In the distance, he could hear the approach of engines, reinforcements coming to reclaim the black site. But he knew they were already too late. The truth had awakened, and 5 centuries of secrets were walking free. As he contemplated his next move, 5 figures emerged from the facility, the same 5 he'd seen organizing on the monitors. They approached him cautiously, studying his face with unusual intensity. "You're the one," said the tallest of them, a being with scaled skin and 4 arms. "The one from her memories." "I don't understand," Tarek replied. "She's in all of us now," explained another, this one humanoid but with features that suggested aquatic adaptation. "Fragments of her consciousness, guiding us back to ourselves. But she saved something special for you." The being reached out, touching Tarek's forehead. A final wave of memories washed over him, not fragmented this time, but complete. Naraya's memories, her life, her purpose. "You are the witness now," the being said, withdrawing its hand. "The one who remembers." Tarek understood then. Naraya hadn't just freed the prisoners. She'd made him the repository of their collective history, the one who could tell their story to a world that had forgotten them. Not quite an arbiter, but something new, something necessary. He knelt, placing the remnants of dust that had been the sword carefully in the sand. "What now?" he asked, looking up at the 5 awakened ones. "Now," said the scaled being, "we remember, and we make them remember too." They helped Tarek to his feet, and together they faced the approaching vehicles, not to fight, but to witness, to ensure that this time, the truth would not be buried. 5 awakened, 1 witness. "You became their voice," Tarek whispered to the memory of Naraya that lived within him now. "I will be their echo, and when they come again, I will remind them that we were human. She left so we could remember. He remained so no one would forget.